So I just saw some news that Bandai Namco basically banished a bunch of employees to this Purgatory-esque room because a bunch of projects were canceled, and now they have nowhere to put them. And you might notice that this is a bit different than something like, say, the Microsoft firings, which kind of happened quick and dirty. You know, a bunch of people were let go and that was it. But this isn't the case here, so why is that? I figure most people outside of Japan don't know exactly how things work here, and that's understandable. Case in point being a comment that I saw online, which went along the lines of something like, putting them in a room until they get their severance is terrible, and sort of chuckled to myself out of almost a sadness, really, because that's not what's happening. Knowing full well these staffers ain't getting any severance. That's a pipe dream. Nope, instead what Bandai is doing most likely is putting them in this room until they basically quit on their own accord. So the thing is, in Japan, getting fired is truly an Olympic level difficult task. You have to do something so outlandish and so on the nose for the company to let you go, and it really honestly almost never happens. Bad at your job? You're safe. Made a small mistake? No problem. The laws here in the country basically prevent people from getting fired. This is good and bad, obviously, right? Because for the employee, it's nice because you don't have to worry about job security. But for the employer, this can be kind of a headache because if they aren't doing a good job and they're kind of just draining resources or not putting up numbers, the laws here basically prevent employees from losing their jobs. To American ears, this might sound wonderful because companies are always cutting employees left and right, all in the name of staying lean and staying competitive. Whereas in Japan, companies don't have that luxury, or however you want to phrase it. So by Bandai putting the employees in this here purgatory room, they're basically trying to get them to quit so they don't have to do it. It's all about playing the waiting game, and some people are up for playing and others not so much. And on top of the employer not being able to say directly, hey, you're fired, there's that added level of Japanese ambiguity when it comes to speaking directly. So it just creates this ugly situation for basically everyone involved, but most importantly, for the employees. There's actually a story I heard once, and this was crazy. It was from a former student of mine, and he had gotten a job, and I think it was a temporary job. He was at the company for about 7 or 8 months, and then suddenly he had to go on vacation for a couple of days. And when he had come back to work, he had noticed that the desks were all rearranged. All right, that's maybe they were just cleaning up, right? No. Instead, what happens next is almost comical levels of evil, I would say. They had put his desk facing the wall, whereas everyone's desks were facing each other. Only his was facing the wall, so he couldn't basically communicate with anyone. None of his bosses, none of his coworkers said anything to him. This was a young guy, mid-20s too. And so what ended up happening was he quit, and they were like, oh no, don't quit. But really, they had set him up for that. I'd seen other stories where people had their positions changed. They maybe went from like an executive or a manager down to some other sort of title. They lose their responsibilities, but again, they're not fired. All of this is part of the psychological game that companies like to play with employees here. The game industry is facing a lot of layoffs recently. You see it in Microsoft. You think you've seen it in Activision, I believe, too. Ubisoft, all these companies for various different reasons. It was only inevitable that some of this would come to Japan, especially a company like Bandai Namco that looks to be stretching themselves pretty thin with all of the games they have in production or had in production. And you would think they would be doing good with something like Sparking Zero just coming out, but I guess they're taking it harder than we thought. And it goes to show you how amazing some companies like Nintendo are that are always the bad guy for people. How many employees do they fire yearly? I think the last employee that got fired was the goof who leaked all the info to the one guy. That's it. So yeah, this is just a video I wanted to make because it's not really the most super crazy interesting story I think out there, but it is really interesting because given these waves of firings from different companies, to see something like this happen, I thought, okay, yeah, this is very typical in Japan, I think. Let me know what you think. Do you prefer the American way, you just get fired and that's it? Or would you rather have the job security but put in the purgatory room? Let me know what you think in the comments below and I'll catch you in the next video. Take care. Mata ne.